talk Liverpool now. Luis Diaz, significant update today, Carve, tell us.
Yeah, Liverpool have rejected an approach from Barcelona for Luis Diaz. Now, it is a bit of a strange situation with Diaz because he's got 2 years left on his contract. And we know that Barcelona have a long-standing interest in him. And also there are clubs in Saudi Arabia who are interested in signing him, like Al Nassr. Now, he's got 2 years left on his contract at Liverpool. I think his expectation is that his representatives are going to have talks with Liverpool about extending that contract. I'm not sure if that is Liverpool's point of view as well. But if he's not going to extend his contract, then you would think that he would need to move on this summer. And there's lots of talk that Liverpool will be making even more big money signings. So is now the right time for him to be leaving? He's been talking because he's on international duty with Colombia. He was talking at a news conference and he basically admitted that, yes, he knows that talks are ongoing and his representatives are talking to other clubs. One of those other clubs, of course, is Barcelona.
So 2 years left on his contract, Mark. Do Liverpool have to avoid the situation that we've just had with Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold?
Absolutely. You have to remember that those three players that you've mentioned there, the hierarchy at Liverpool were very different to what they are now. It's obviously Richard Hughes is the sporting director, Michael Edwards is involved with FSG, so you've got different personnel at the top of the tree. But any time I have a conversation, and Carvo's probably the same about contracts and players, they say the simple rule, you get down to 2 years, you either sign a new deal or we sell you. We don't get down to the final year because that's where the price drops. And of course, when you see someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold leaving for essentially a free, although they got £10 million in the end for him to play in the Club World Cup, that's the nightmare situation. So the noises that Luis Diaz has made with regards to exploring other opportunities and potential options makes sense based on that. But yeah, this is a nightmare situation for any football club. So this will be a big summer for him, either with an extension or Liverpool will say, we're going to recycle that cash and we're going to go use that money to bring someone else in.
Does his situation have any knock-on effect on the Florian Wirtz deal?
No, separate deal. Liverpool had essentially a brilliant summer last year because they spent little to no money, sold players, generated cash, and have a big chunk of that still burning a hole in their pocket. So they've been able to roll that cash forward to this summer, and that's where they can go big. Our information here at Sky Sports News is that Liverpool, and as we've seen already, are looking to really heavily invest in maybe 4 or 5 players over the course of this summer. We know that Frimpong's through the door. We know that they're in talks with Bayer Leverkusen at the moment. Whilst that second offer of £105 million or so hasn't been rejected, the conversation continues. So whatever happens with Luis Diaz, it's not going to affect Wirtz. But any football club, and Carve will tell you the same, the ones that operate in the right way, the ones that are smart, the ones that are astute and clever, they get players in first and then they get players out. Never sign a player unless you're ready to get someone out the door. Otherwise, you get stuck with players that you can't afford and you don't want, and then you end up sending them out on loan at the back end of the window and paying half their wages.
I think the thing about Wirtz as well is, obviously some Liverpool fans will now be asking the question, what's going on? What's going on? Why is this taking so long?
Yeah.
There are all these reports on social media that it was a done deal and there were pictures of him in a Liverpool shirt. I think from Liverpool's perspective, everyone's just got to calm down. The important thing is the player himself has made it clear he only wants to sign for Liverpool. I know there's been some stories in the Spanish media saying possibly Real Madrid could come in for him and snatch him because Xabi Alonso wants to work with him again and take him to Real Madrid. I don't think anybody at Liverpool is worried about that. I don't think this deal is in jeopardy at all because the player has made it clear, I want to go to Liverpool. And Bayer Leverkusen would much rather sell him to Liverpool than sell him to Bayern Munich. And I think this deal will happen, but let's give Liverpool time to make sure that the numbers are right, because this is a massive deal, The kind of deal that we were told that Manchester City walked away from, because when you add up the size of the transfer fee and also the size of the wages over the length of the term of the contract, you were talking about an investment of around £200 million. And when you're investing that kind of money, you need to take your time and make sure everything is right before you sign on the dotted line.
Oh, you're going to go out to Spain because we're going to talk about Luis Diaz, and Rob Dorset, our football correspondent, is there. So, Rob, what is the latest on Diaz?
Well, it's a significant headline, Mike, isn't it? Liverpool, we understand, have rejected an approach from Barcelona for Luis Diaz. And I've been talking to some of the Spanish media out here and some Spanish contacts, and they've made it pretty clear to me that Barcelona aren't easily giving up on this one. He's been a long-term target for them and remains so. They really want a left attacking player on that left wing, and Diaz fits the bill perfectly for them. Plays wide left, scores goals, creates chances, and I think he's got that flair and personality that Barcelona think would fit well into their side. But pretty clearly Liverpool don't want to engage on this discussion at the moment. As far as they're concerned, Diaz is not for sale. He's still got 2 years left on his contract though, and that's what's really interesting for me, because I think it's getting to decision time for Liverpool. They won't want him to go into the final year of his contract, because we've just seen what's happened with Trent Alexander-Arnold and the possibility for him leaving for nothing. They won't want that to happen for Diaz, even though he's 28 now. So they're going to have to start renegotiating with him on a new contract if they want him to stay. But Diaz is also on the radar of Al Nassr in the Saudi Pro League. He was at Nottingham Forest as well. I don't think either of those are going to happen for him. I can't see Liverpool selling to those. But I've been asking some of my Spanish contacts out here, why did Barca want Luis Diaz? Bear in mind they've got Robert Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, Dani Olmo in those attacking positions. It's arguably the best attacking four in the world football right now. And it's been explained to me that crucially none of those play wide left, and that's what they're after. And that's what Diaz offers. But if they can't get him from Liverpool, if that is an absolute no-go, then they're going to have to look elsewhere. And my sources over here are saying to me that Marcus Rashford is still very much on Barcelona's radar. Wages may be a problem for Barcelona to pay in terms of Marcus Rashford. So would Manchester United consider another loan deal for Marcus Rashford to try and reduce some of those wages? I think that's much later in the window if we get to a discussion about that. And then there's Nico Williams, who's another option for Barcelona, wide left. He's at Athletic Club, of course. Now, he's got an achievable release clause, believed to be about £55 million. But again, he's on huge wages, which I'm being told might be beyond what Barcelona can afford to do. And Williams has said himself that he wants to stay in Bilbao because they've got Champions League football next season and he wants to be part of that. So at the moment, Barcelona, the huge club that they are, aren't having a lot of joy with trying to get a left-sided attacker. And the latest news we've heard today is that they've had an approach for Liverpool's Diaz turned down. So we'll see whether they can try and pursue that one, because at the moment Liverpool aren't engaging on it at all.
Yeah, I want to stick with Luis Diaz, Rob. So I know that he's spoken today. What's he had to say?
Well, listen to this, Mike, 'cause I think this is interesting. We know there's rules within football that clubs can't approach players or even their representatives to discuss deals if those players are already under contract somewhere else, unless they're in their final year of the contract and it gets to January, etc., etc. Well, he talks pretty openly about this, Luis Diaz. Let's show you what he said. He says, crucially, I'm very, very happy in Liverpool. There's no anything to doubt there. He says, from day one, they've made me feel very welcome. Right now, we're in contact with them because we're speaking with other clubs. He means him and his own representatives there. He says that's normal, the market is open and we're trying to sort out what's best for us. I'm just waiting to see what happens. If Liverpool doesn't make a good offer, I still have 2 years left with them. I would be happy and content to stay there, and that's it. Everything depends on them, obviously, but it's up to me to decide what's best for us and the future. So I think there's a little bit of ambiguity there in what Luis Diaz has had to say. I don't know how Liverpool will feel about those comments that he's made, but at the moment, Liverpool's position is very, very clear. They don't want to sell Luis Diaz. They simply don't want to engage with Barcelona or anybody else about an issue that might involve him moving away from Anfield.
Rob, I know you're going to stay with us throughout the programme, but for the moment, thanks ever so much. Carve, let's talk Diaz then. 2 years on his contract. Are we at the situation where he either gets a new contract or he leaves?
I mean, that's the way it normally works in football. A club as big as Liverpool with an asset like Luis Diaz, you don't want to get into a situation where he's running down his contract. Having said that, we've seen Liverpool with the situation with Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold this season. They managed to get pretty close to the end of their contracts and they kept hold of Salah and Virgil van Dijk. I think the Luis Diaz situation is a bit of a complicated one. I think there's lots of different ways of looking at it, because what we were told about a month ago was that his representatives were going to sit down with Liverpool after the season ended to talk about the possibility of a contract extension. But I'm not sure that's the way Liverpool see it. I think perhaps Liverpool see it as a case of he's got 2 years left on his contract, he's playing well, he's a Liverpool player, let's see you for pre-season. But obviously, behind the scenes, I think the situation is that he's not one of the highest paid players at Liverpool. Perhaps he feels he's been left behind when other players are getting new contracts. And in the back of his mind, of course, he's got this enticing prospect of playing for Barcelona. So perhaps that is what his representatives are trying to do, keep all their options open. And if there's a possibility of going to Barcelona and Liverpool get a great offer, who knows, they may consider it, especially if they're considering making even more changes to their forward options.
Well, on that, Florian Wirtz, we know Liverpool want him. Does it make sense for them then to get rid of Luis Diaz?
It doesn't make sense to lose a player that's essentially a first-team starter before they've got a replacement in. I think Liverpool are quite relaxed in this situation. They're never going to attack the window and say, yeah, he's for sale, we don't want him, he's available. Because straight away the buying club will say, well, OK, they don't really value him that highly, so therefore we can go in with a low offer. Whereas if Liverpool have the stance of, no, this is a player that's a key part of our first team. We see him as a big member of this Liverpool squad moving forward. So therefore, we would reluctantly listen to offers. Straight away, those buying clubs know, well, actually, we can't go in with a low ball offer because of the noises that Liverpool have made. In terms of the Florian Wirtz deal, this is a huge deal. I know a lot of Liverpool fans are saying, well, on social media, I saw last week that it was all done and dusted. It was going to be 48 hours. It was going to happen. And yet here we are, probably 6-7 days into this window and probably 3 or 4 weeks into this conversation, and still nothing's happened. Talks continue with Bayer Leverkusen. He's still very much on their radar. The key thing is the player is desperate to join Liverpool. He's made the right noises. So it's just a case of finding a little bit of common ground between what Bayer Leverkusen want, which we understand to be 150 million euros, and what Liverpool's last offer was, which we think was about 130. So there's not a huge gap, but that conversation continues.
So Liverpool working on Wirtz. We know they're working on Kerkez. How close is that one, Mark?
Do you know what? My phone just went off. So, no, nothing more in terms of detail there.
Hello to your mum for me, though.
No, that wasn't my mum. That was a contact that may provide some information there. My mum loves you. You know that, Mike.
Well, she's a good judge.
So, no developments there. Again, this is a very similar situation. Carve said it in the show at 5 o'clock. People are expecting things to happen overnight. These are big deals. These are complex deals. We know that Liverpool are interested in Milos Kerkez, but as of about 30 seconds ago, no formal contact to Bournemouth at this stage. So you'd have to say that whilst there is interest, at the moment, it remains interest.
OK, all right, we're going to take a break, so give you time to phone your mum and tell her why you haven't been in touch.